Hello, this is Kent Sovereign, State Director of AARP Iowa, with Anthony Carroll, our Associate State Director for Advocacy. Earlier this week, Governor Branstad laid out his state of the state and his legislative priorities, and we'd like to continue our conversation about the importance of caregivers. And last time we talked about the increasing reliance on family caregiving because people want to stay in their home and they want to stay actively engaged in their community. And so caregiving is much more or falling to a greater extent on the family caregivers. So what has been our response to our members asking us to do something to aid them in this new role?
Part of our response to the realities of family caregivers is important for us to understand the realities of these family caregivers when we're talking about 2/3 of the long-term care being provided in homes and communities. And so we want to understand what are their needs are, what are their challenges. We'll start with the fact that these family caregivers are caring for oftentimes situations that they didn't see coming, caring for a parent who has an emergency health issue and now is leaving the hospital. So what are the realities, what are their challenges as they come home from the hospital? So hence the idea of behind the CARE Act to help prepare the family caregivers with a baseline expectation, baseline understanding of what they're about to enter in terms of preparing for their loved ones.
So this CARE Act is a bill that we've helped draft and we've presented for legislative sponsorship. It's something we're going to be working on for the next few months. What are a couple of the essential elements of that, especially as it relates to that relationship between the family caregiver and the institution that's discharging their loved one?
Well, that's right. Yeah, it's really about connecting the dots, if you will, from the great care that is being provided by hospitals around the state of Iowa, connecting that family caregiver and really involving them in the process as their loved one leaves the hospital. That process actually begins when their loved one, the patient, enters the hospital. If a patient goes in the hospital, they'll be asked a question: would you like to designate someone as your family caregiver?
And let me be clear.
Yeah.
Even though we're using the term family caregiver, it may be other people that may not be related to me, but they
Sure.
are in that relationship as the caregiver to this. So
Right.
it may be a neighbor, a close friend, someone from a faith-based community, but
Yep.
certainly the
Is
vast
that-
majority are family members.
That's right. We know the vast majority, going back to who these people are, family members. But you're absolutely right, Ken. You're talking about people who they know, these patients know, are going to assume the role of caring for them. Oftentimes it's a family member, but if you know that you're going to have someone there, involving them right up front in the process, saying, so my son or daughter, or as you say, my church member is going to be the one taking care of them. So notifying them.
As a patient, I've said on the front end, yes, I have a caregiver, and that caregiver is my spouse, my daughter, my son, my friend. And so then a few days later, I'm ready to be discharged from the hospital. What does our legislation perceive, or what does it anticipate is going to be the relationship between the hospital and me and my caregiver?
Well, this is really where it gets critical. After assuming, by the way, you've opted to designate, and some people might not opt not to, or might not have someone they're going to designate. But if you do choose to designate a caregiver, and now you're leaving the hospital, the bill says within a reasonable amount of time of leaving the hospital, that family caregiver, this caregiver is notified that you're leaving. So, okay, now it's their time to really step in or be prepared to step in. So that's step two, is notification. And then that triggers the final really kind of bundled, really essential part. The really heart of the CARE Act is a conversation about what their tasks are going to be. For instance, if it's going to be an injection, what does the injection look like? How do you do it? And having the opportunity to ask questions. Now, how do I do this? And also, frankly, if some of those tasks are too difficult or something the family caregiver do, having that opportunity to have a conversation and say, well, maybe that's not something I can do. So it's in part kind of a reality check of what they're going to be doing, but then absolutely critical, the really final part of this is that live demonstration, the instructions on what they're going to be doing, so they are prepared to care.
So I'm going to anticipate that some institutions are already doing a bang-up job of this. Others may not be. Why Why do we need to codify, or why do we need to put this into state policy, Anthony?
Right. Well, it's really, you're exactly right. And you know, one of the things, our hospitals really, and we know, and I say this statistically valid, our hospitals are some of the best in the country we have, and the care they're providing is fantastic. And one of the things that they are increasingly doing, thankfully, is looking at how do they prevent hospital readmission. So a lot of the steps that are being taken, it's consistent with those steps. But really, it's about making sure, it's really about the caregivers, Kent, and it's about making sure that there is a baseline preparation if they're going to have medical tasks or nursing tasks they're going to be performing. So if it's being done, great. This law is easy to comply with, and then everyone else, I think, is really already moving towards there. So it's really just saying, it's really about, as a state, we value caregivers, and we're going to make sure that these people who are providing 2/3 of the care already have some basic baseline expertise or really baseline comfort to be able to do what they need to do.
Thank you, Anthony, for
Thank you.
filling us in. That's a lot of information around not a very long bill. So we'll hope to see you again soon. We'll talk to you more about what's happening up at the state capitol during the 2015 session. For Anthony Carroll, I'm Kent Sovereign. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks.